Ronaldinho went from being the best player in the world to becoming the captain of South American prison's most dangerous football team, all because of a crazy addiction that ruined his life. But it wasn't always like this for Ronnie, man. He had high hopes and dreams of making it out of the hood because his family meant everything to him, and he decided he was going to do whatever it took to make them happy, even if it cost him his own life. Growing up, Ronnie and his family had it rough. They lived in the most dangerous parts of Porto Alegre in Brazil, full of gangsters, criminals, and drug lords. These streets weren't safe to raise a family. And it's not as if Ronnie's parents didn't know this. Ronaldinho's dad, Juan Moreira, used to be a professional footballer, but he was now working as a welder just to take care of his family. And Ronaldinho's mom, Miguelina de Lassis, did make up and later became a nurse. But the thing is, guys, they only had enough money to survive and couldn't even afford a decent house, so they just lived in a wooden shack. Right there, Ronnie knew he couldn't afford to slip up because the family had high hopes for him and his brother Roberto. Despite being poor and having no money, there was one thing that kept everyone in Ronnie's family together and was always smiling. Just like every other Brazilian family, football. So every day, Ronnie, Roberto, and their dad were out in the backyard or the streets just playing and having fun. Until one day, Yo realized his kids had talent, and they could go pro and take off from where he stopped. But there was one major problem standing in the way. Because he had no money, he couldn't afford to buy boots for his kids. So with tears in his eyes, he lied to them. Roberto, Ronnie, if you want to become the best footballers on the planet, it's better to play without shoes. What Yao didn't know was that this was a blessing in disguise. They had constantly trained barefoot, and on the days he had to go back to work, he immediately rushed home just so he could join his boys. And pretty soon, Roberto became so good that local clubs in Brazil couldn't resist him. And the scouts got talking. "You gotta come check out this kid Roberto, he's really good. We should invite him over and give him a trial." Boom! A couple of months later, Roberto made the cut. It was the happiest day of their lives because Roberto going pro came with a whole load of benefits. A new house in the city that even had a pool. Their lives changed, man. All of those years of training, it was finally paying off now. They could live their best lives and soak it all in. So on Roberto's 18th birthday, he decided to throw a party to celebrate the new home and his new contract. His life was on the up. But as soon as he got back home from training to celebrate, he quickly realized that it was all about to come crashing down. Yao had an accident. He fell into a pool and had a heart attack. They called 911 and immediately rushed him to the hospital. The doctors promised they'd do everything they could to save him, but it was a promise they'd never keep. And as they walked out of the ER, they dropped devastating news. "We're so sorry, but he didn't make it." Roberto, Ronnie, and their mom, Miguelina, were crushed. But this was the turning point. See, the anger and disappointment of losing their dad so early turned Roberto into a beast. He became determined to make it as a pro for Pops and started balling out at Grêmio. The guy was electric, man. He led his team into 3 league titles, and now it wasn't just the local clubs looking for him. Brazil was searching for the next generation of Samba boys, and they thought Roberto would be a perfect fit. So when they got to training the next day, his coach couldn't wait to tell him, "Roberto, you've just been called up to the national team." Amazing! Now he had the chance to represent his family on the biggest stage. There was only one person on Roberto's mind, and that was his dad. So in his last game before he linked up with the national team, Roberto decided he'd dedicate that game to Pops, and went a little extra. He was emotional before the game and had tears in his eyes. But just a couple of minutes later, was crying for something else because he knew, just like the rest of his teammates after it happened, that his career was over. Roberto didn't just break his knee, he broke his chance of representing his national team. His family couldn't believe it. Their dreams were about to get dashed again. But right there, Roberto came up with a plan to save their future. See, his dad taught him everything he knew, and now he was a pro. But Dad didn't just teach him alone, he also taught Ronnie before his passing. See, Ronnie was just 8 and still a kid, but Roberto knew that if he got him into shape, he'd be the one to save the family. So he dedicated the next years of his life to training young Ronnie. Juggling, free kicks, finishing drills, dribbling, they practiced everything. And in a couple of months, even though Ronnie was still a scrappy-looking kid, no one could deny his talent. In a friendly game, Ronnie's team won 23-0. The scoreline was crazy enough, but when they checked out the stats, they thought there was an error in the scoreboard because it only had one name on it. and that's when they realized. Ronnie scored all 23 goals. Gremio quickly rushed, and in 1998, gave Ronnie and his family a second chance. Ronnie signed for Gremio, and in 4 years, he became the hottest thing in Brazil. He was scoring goals and giving assists, but his most entertaining displays were the dribbling. Ronnie had Gremio selling out tickets fast, and on match days, the stadium was sold out with fans and scouts. Yep, the same scouts that were watching his brother play a couple years back were eyeing up Ronnie. So, in the Confed Cup, they offered him a spot on the national team, the Best Player of the Competition award, and on the plane back home, Roberto phoned him and explained the whole situation. "Ronnie, there's a club in Europe after you. They need you, man. Gremio's great, but in Europe, you can finally fulfill Dad's dream of playing in the Champions League." Ronnie didn't even think about it. All he cared about was making his dad happy, watching him from the sky. So in 2001, after PSG came calling, he signed a 5-year deal worth $5 million. At first, he was on the bench and couldn't make the first team cut. But like a true Samba boy, all he needed was a couple of games to find his rhythm, and bang! He scored in 4 straight games, and the fans were loving him. But you see guys, the coaches at PSG noticed something a little strange about Ronnie. At first they thought maybe he's still new and doing it just to adjust. But after a couple more months, it got worse, and pretty soon became a huge problem. Ronnie couldn't stop dancing. He was legit skipping training just to party across Paris. He was only showing up on match days. So PSG decided to cash in, and they put him up on the market. Now, Ronnie wasn't that young kid at Gremio anymore. He was global. In 2002, he was a part of the Brazil team that won the World Cup. Everyone knew about his skills now, and as soon as they heard the news, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Bayern, and Inter were all struggling to get Ronnie's signature. But there was only one club on his mind, and it was all because of one person. Raul Gino's dad, João, was a huge fan of this club, so if Ronnie picked another club to sign on for, he'd be hurting his dad. And on decision day, together with his brother Roberto, Ronnie picked up the pen and signed for the Spanish Giants. He was now in Barcelona, and this was the time to finally fulfill Dad's dream of becoming the best in the world. Barca gave Ronnie the freedom to express himself, and he was sensational. He won every trophy available at the club, was tearing defenders week in and week out, won the Ballon d'Or, and even got a standing ovation from Real freaking Madrid at the Bernabeu. But you see guys, there was one opponent Ronnie just couldn't beat no matter how hard he tried: his addictions. He was hooked on the party life, and at Barca, when he had Ibiza just a couple of blocks away, it was impossible for him to stop. So he kept drinking and partying hard until one day the guys at Barca had seen enough and got really scared about their future. Lionel Messi was still a young kid at Barca's academy back then, but just like himself when he was younger, Ronnie knew this kid was going to be special, so he took him in, trained him, and the two became best of buddies. Ronnie even assisted in Messi's first Barca goal. Despite all of this, off the pitch, Barca's coach, Pep Guardiola, was worried because he felt Ronnie was a bad influence on Messi. All the partying and drinking, he didn't want it to affect Messi's future, so he talked to Ronnie about it, but he couldn't stop, no matter how hard he tried. So with a couple of days left to end his contract, Pep called him in and broke the news. "We won't be renewing your contract. Good luck with the future." Ronnie was heartbroken. When he joined Barca for the first time since his dad passed, he was happy. He played with a smile on his face every week, Yogo Bonito, but now it was all gone. But before he headed out, he had one final request. "When I leave, make sure you give Leo my jersey number." Pep agreed, and Ronnie was off. As he got home, he started to think about his life. All he wanted to do was fit in and be happy. But now it's gone. He didn't know what to do until his agent phoned in again. "Ronnie, you're not going to believe this. You're the best in the world. But imagine playing with Beckham, Maldini, Gattuso, and even your buddy in Brazil, Kaká, and R9. Yep, AC Milan wants you." Ronnie jumped in at the opportunity, but even though things weren't going great at the beginning, his inner demons came back to haunt him, and he just couldn't give them the drinking. So after a couple months, Milan let him go, and in the years that followed, Ronnie bounced around clubs in Brazil. All he could think about was his dad. He's gone. Dad ain't here to see me winning. And that was killing his love for the game. So in 2015, Ronnie finally called it quits, and this was the beginning of the end. With no salary coming in, Ronnie was living, actually partying, on the money he'd saved up. His finances were going down, he was racking up debts, but it didn't matter to him. because every time he drank and partied hard, it made him forget about his dad for a bit. Until one day he got so drunk, he came a few seconds away from becoming a national tragedy. Ronnie crashed his car, and as he came out, people looked into his eyes and realized he was different. That show-stopping Samba wonder from years back was now a broken dude needing help. And to make it worse, not long after the car crash, the cops came in, and that's when they found out Ronnie's dark secrets. He was involved in very shady deals, unpaid debts of over millions, and with only $7 in his bank account, there was no way he could pay up. So they took him to court, and there they seized all his assets, including his passport. Ronnie was desperate to get out, but with his passport gone, he was locked in. That's when Roberto came up with a plan they thought was going to set him free, but it ruined their lives. Roberto and Ronnie got arrested at the airport for flying in with fake passports. You see, Ronnie probably forgot that he was a super popular guy and went ahead with this crazy idea. But as soon as he got to Paraguay, they recognized him real quick. And for illegal entry, Ronnie was sent to prison, facing almost 5 years of jail time. His life had hit rock bottom. His career was gone. His dad was gone. Mom was disappointed. And now it seemed like he was going to be spending his 40th birthday locked up behind bars. Everything seemed like the end. But in prison, Ronnie soon got reunited with an old love. And as their spark ignited, his hopes and dreams came back to life. Ronnie was putting up a show in prison, and even got to captain his team on a couple of occasions. The judges saw his good behavior, so they decided they'd let him out, but on one condition. You have to pay bail of $1 million, and we would place you under house arrest. Some of Ronnie's old friends like Samuel Ito pulled through for their buddy, and pretty soon Ronnie posted bail and he was out. In there, Ronnie made a promise to himself that he was gonna change, and this time he meant every word. So he stopped drinking, became sober, and picked up his life and started a rap studio. He also began his brand of organic gin, and even got a video game exclusive. His life was finally back up, and he decided he'd make a movie about himself because for the first time in a long time, he was truly happy. And while shooting on set, he remembered his dad, only this time, it wasn't like before. Now Ronnie remembered his dad, and he knew he'd be happy for him. He'd won everything and was finally living his own life, not to please anyone, but for himself. And as the director cut the scene, Ronnie shouted, "Get me a glass of R1. Let's make a toast to Dad."